one line in the wrong place. That is all it took. A company moved a single firewall rule 2 spots higher in the list, and a database server that was supposed to be invisible to the internet was suddenly reachable by anyone on the planet. No malware, no stolen password, no clever exploit, just a rule read in the wrong order. And here is the part that should make every defender nervous. The firewall was working exactly as designed the entire time, following its rules perfectly. The mistake was human, and by the end of this episode you will be able to spot it in seconds, the same way a Security Plus exam question wants you to.
This is Professor Erica, and that ordering trap is the heart of today's topic. We are covering Objective 4.5, one of the densest in the whole exam. It runs from firewalls and their rules to intrusion detection systems, web filtering, operating system hardening, and DNS filtering. It is a lot, so we will build it one wall at a time.
Liam here, and my read is that the word firewall confuses people before they even start. So let me ask the dumb question on purpose. What actually is a firewall rule? My guess is it is simpler than it sounds, and that the danger is hiding in something boring.
Your guess is exactly right. A firewall rule is one line that looks at the source address, the destination, and the port, then either allows that traffic or denies it. Stack a bunch of those lines together and you have an access control list, an ACL. The exam wants you to know that an ACL is nothing more than an ordered list of allow and deny rules.
And ordered is the whole game, so let me put the stakes plainly. The firewall does not weigh all the rules and pick the smartest one. It reads from the top, and the very first rule that matches the traffic wins, stopping the instant it finds a match. That tiny detail is where real companies get burned.
So it is less like a judge weighing all the evidence and more like a checklist that quits reading the second something matches.
Exactly that. Picture the rule list like a bouncer reading a guest list from the top down. The moment a name matches, the bouncer acts and stops reading. So if a careless line near the top says let everyone in, it does not matter what airtight deny rules sit below it, because a permissive rule above a deny silently overrides it.
Which leads to the one rule that should always live at the very bottom, and it is the safety net that should have saved that exposed database. The implicit deny. Every well-built firewall ends with a final rule that blocks anything not explicitly allowed above it. If no rule says yes, the answer is automatically no. That is the right instinct. So much of Objective 4.5 comes down to trusting the default deny over a careless allow. The implicit deny is your floor, and a permissive rule above it is the crack in that floor.
There is a question that lands under almost every firewall tutorial online, and it frames this whole episode. Liam, you ask the questions everyone is thinking, so go ahead and put it on the board.
Happy to people keep asking the same thing. If my firewall already has a deny rule for this traffic, how could a single misordered line possibly expose a server to the entire internet? Hold that question, because next we build that exact firewall in a live terminal and then break it.
And that is where rule order stops being theory. We are about to type a real rule set, watch it protect the server, then move one line and watch the wall fall. Once you have seen the bypass happen in a terminal, you never misread an ACL again.
Let me actually build this with you, because seeing it beats hearing it every time. We are going to build a default deny firewall, where we block everything first and then allow only what we need. This is on a Linux box I control in an isolated lab using iptables, and you only ever configure firewalls on systems you are authorized to manage.
And iptables is a great one to learn on because the logic is the same logic every firewall uses, just stripped down to plain text you can read line by line.
Right, and we start the right way, with a default deny posture. The smart move is to set the baseline to block everything, then carve out only the traffic you actually need. So first, I set the default policy on the input chain to drop. Right now, this server talks to no one.
That default drop is the implicit deny made real. Notice the order of operations matters here too. With the baseline blocking everything, every rule we add now is a deliberate exception. This is the principle the exam calls least access. Only open what the service genuinely requires.
I like that the safe default is the lazy one, in a sense. You block everything, then you only have to think hard about the few things you choose to allow, instead of trying to imagine every bad thing to deny.
Now I open exactly 2 doors and nothing more. I allow port 443 so the public can reach our website over HTTPS. Then I allow port 22, secure shell, but only from the administrator's own address. The web server should be public, the management port should not.
So let me read the wall back to confirm I understand it. Anyone can reach the website, only the admin can reach the management port, and the database on 3306 is sealed because we never opened it and the default is drop. That looks airtight to me. Where does it go wrong?
It goes wrong the day someone needs a quick fix and adds a rule in a hurry. Picture a junior admin, call him Devin, a first-week hire told to let a monitoring tool reach the server fast. He does not want to think about ports, so he writes one broad allow rule, and crucially, he inserts it at the top of the chain so it definitely takes effect. Watch what that does.
And there it is, the exact exposure from our cold open. Look at Rule 1. It accepts traffic from 0.0.0.0/0, which is the entire internet, going anywhere. Because the firewall reads top-down and stops at the first match, Rule 1 now answers for everything, and the default drop and the careful port rules below it never get a vote.
So the database that was sealed a moment ago is now reachable from anywhere, even though no one ever wrote a rule that opened the database. Devin did not unlock that door. He just told the bouncer to wave everyone through before checking the list. Same firewall, same rules, one position changed. Total bypass.
That answers the question from scene 1 perfectly. The deny rule existed the whole time, it was just standing behind a permissive rule that the firewall reached first, so the deny never ran. The fix is almost insultingly simple, right? Move the broad rule, or delete it.
Exactly. You delete that reckless Rule 1 and the wall is whole again with HTTPS. Public, secure shell locked to the admin, and the implicit deny catching everything else. For the exam, burn this in. When a firewall question describes traffic that should be blocked but is getting through, suspect rule order first, a permissive rule sitting above the deny.
And this is precisely the kind of broken rule set a security plus performance question puts in front of you and asks you to repair. You will be handed an ACL with the rules out of order and told to fix the exposure. Now you know the move. Read top-down, find the rule that matches too much, and get it below the deny or gone.
So the wall itself is only as strong as the order of its lines. But a single wall is not how real networks are built. Next, we look at where you place these firewalls and the watchers that sit behind them. Let me pause for just a second because this genuinely helps. If you are getting value here, hit that like button, then subscribe and ring the bell. It costs you nothing, and it is the single biggest thing that keeps these videos coming. Where you put a firewall matters as much as how you write its rules. The exam loves a layout called the screened subnet, and the older name you will still see is the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. It exists to answer one uncomfortable question. What happens after your public web server gets hacked?
Because some servers have to face the internet. Your website, your email gateway, your public DNS. They are exposed by their very job, which means they are the most likely to be compromised. The screened subnet assumes one of them will fall and plans the network so that fall is contained. A screened subnet places those public servers in a buffer zone between 2 firewall boundaries. One boundary stands between the internet and the buffer. The second stands between the buffer and your internal network. The public servers live in the middle, screened on both sides.
Here is why families and businesses should care, in plain terms. Think of it like a shop with a public front counter and a private back office. Customers reach the counter, but a thief who jumps the counter still hits a locked door before the safe. The breach stops at the buffer instead of walking straight into your private records.
So, my read is that the screen subnet is really damage control, not prevention. It assumes the public box gets popped, and just makes sure the attacker is trapped in a room with no door to the good stuff. That is a very different mindset from a single wall trying to stop everything.
And one detail the exam folds into all of this is ports and protocols, because every rule you write names a port. Remember the common ones cold? 443 is HTTPS, 22 is Secure Shell, 53 is DNS, 25 is Email over SMTP. When a firewall question gives you a port number, it is really telling you which service is being allowed or blocked.
That is the architecture exactly. Now, walls decide what gets through, but something has to watch what is already moving inside. That is the job of intrusion detection and intrusion prevention, and the exam tests the difference between them relentlessly. Erica, draw the line for us.
It comes down to one word: response. An intrusion detection system, an IDS, is passive. It watches traffic, recognizes something suspicious, and raises an alert, and that is all it does. It is a smoke detector that tells you there is a fire, but does not put the fire out.
So the IDS can scream that the house is burning, but someone still has to come and actually stop the fire.
Right, and that someone can be a machine. An intrusion prevention system, an IPS, sits in line directly in the path of the traffic. When it recognizes an attack, it does not just alert, it can drop the packet and block the connection in real time. The IDS detects and notifies, the IPS detects and prevents, and that one distinction is worth easy points on exam day.
And how they recognize an attack splits into two methods you must keep straight. Signature-based detection compares traffic against a library of known attack patterns. It is fast and accurate for threats it already knows, like a fingerprint match. But it is blind to anything brand new that is not in the library yet. Anomaly-based detection learns what normal looks like on your network, then flags anything that deviates from that baseline. It can catch a never-seen attack, which signatures miss, but it pays for that with false positives when normal behavior simply changes. Signatures catch the known, anomaly flags the odd, and each covers the other's blind spot.
Liam, you have been quiet, and I can tell you are sitting on the question every student trips over here. Go ahead and put it straight to Erica.
Yes, and it is the one I always get wrong first. So let me put it to you straight, Erica. IDS or IPS, what is the one single difference the exam is actually testing?
Good, because the wording trips students up. If a system can only alert you, it is detection, an IDS. If it can actively stop the traffic, it is prevention, an IPS. The single deciding factor on the exam is whether the device is in line and able to block, so memorize that and the lookalike answers fall away.
So now we have a real fork. If an IPS can block attacks automatically, why would anyone settle for an IDS that only watches? Stick with me, because that tension is exactly where security teams disagree, and the way they resolve it is the single most testable judgment call in this objective. Here is where good security teams genuinely split, and it matters for both the exam and your real job. You can run a passive IDS that only alerts, or an inline IPS that blocks automatically. The stakes are real. So the question on the table is which one you reach for first. Maya thinks an inline IPS that blocks attacks the moment it sees them is the obvious choice. Liam is not so sure, and worries about what happens when the machine guesses wrong. I am going to keep them honest, and then we settle it with what the standards actually say.
An attack moving at machine speed needs a defense at machine speed. An IDS that only alerts means a human has to read the alert, understand it, and react. And by then, the breach is hours old. The IPS sits in the traffic and kills the malicious packet before it ever lands. Detection without prevention is just a very detailed report of how you got robbed.
That speed argument is not abstract. In a fast-moving intrusion, the gap between the first malicious packet and a human responding can be the whole breach. Liam, that is a strong case. What is the catch?
The catch is the word automatically. An IPS says that blocks on its own will eventually block the wrong thing. Anomaly detection throws false positives, and an inline device acting on a false positive does not send an email, it cuts off real traffic. Imagine it deciding your payroll system is an attack on the last day of the month.
So we just let the attack through and apologize later?
No, I am saying an IDS lets a human confirm before anything gets cut. In a hospital or a trading floor, a wrongful block can do more damage than the attack you were guarding against. Sometimes watching carefully beats swinging blindly. The right tool depends on what an outage costs you.
You are both circling the answer the exam actually settles, so let me bring in what the objectives say rather than our instincts. The line is cleaner than this debate suggests. Security Plus does not crown one winner. It tests whether you understand the trade-off. An IPS is preferred when you can trust its tuning, and an outage is survivable because automatic blocking stops the threat in real time. An IDS is preferred when a false block is unacceptable and you need a human in the loop, or when you only have visibility and cannot touch the traffic.
So neither of us was wrong, we were describing different environments.
Exactly, and here is the verdict to carry into the exam. Default to an inline IPS for a network where you can tune it well and absorb a rare bad block, because real-time prevention beats a slow human every time. But choose an IDS, or run the IPS in detect-only mode at first, when a false positive would cut off something that cannot go down. Match the tool to the cost of being wrong.
Fair. Tune it, trust it, then let it block. That I will sign off on. Now let us go filter the actual web traffic and lock down the operating system underneath all of this. A firewall controls ports and addresses, but it does not understand the web the way you do. It cannot tell a research site from a malware site if both ride on port 443, because to the firewall they are just encrypted traffic to the same port. That is the job of the web filter, and it is the next layer in Objective 4.5.
A web filter inspects where a user is actually trying to go and decides whether to allow it, and the exam wants the methods by name. URL scanning checks the exact address against allow and block lists. Content categorization sorts entire classes of sites, like gambling or known malware, so you can block a whole category at once. And reputation scoring blocks sites that have a history of hosting threats.
And there are two places to enforce that, which the exam contrasts directly. An agent-based filter is software installed on each device, so the rules travel with the laptop even when it leaves the office. A centralized proxy sits in the middle of the network and every request flows through it, which is easier to manage but only protects traffic that passes through it.
So agent-based follows the user everywhere, but you have to install and update it on every machine, and the proxy is one tidy choke point but useless the moment someone is off the network. My read is the exam just wants me to know the trade-off, not declare a winner.
Now drop a level below the browser to the operating system itself, because filtering web traffic means nothing if the host underneath is wide open. The exam names two hardening tools, one for Windows and one for Linux. Erica, take Windows.
On Windows, the central tool is Group Policy. It lets an administrator push security settings to every machine in the domain from one place. Password length, which programs may run, disabling risky features, all enforced automatically across thousands of computers. Without it, you would be hardening each machine by hand, which simply does not scale.
And the Linux equivalent the exam loves is SELinux, Security Enhanced Linux. It enforces what each process is allowed to touch, even if that process is running as root. So if your web server gets popped, SELinux can stop the attacker from reading files the web server was never meant to touch. Let us actually look at it running. That word enforcing is the one to remember. Only in enforcing mode does SELinux actually deny a violation. Permissive logs what it would have blocked, but lets it through. useful for testing, and disabled turns it off entirely. A classic real-world mistake is leaving a server in permissive and assuming you are protected when you are only taking notes.
So permissive is the security guard who writes down every break-in but never actually stops one. That is a trap I would absolutely fall into.
Exactly the trap. And the way SELinux makes its decisions is by labels called contexts. Every file carries one, and you can see it with LS-Z. Watch the extra column that normal else never shows you.
Read that context because the format is testable. 4 fields separated by colons give you the user, the role, the type, and the level. The piece that matters most is the type, httpd_sys_content here, which SELinux uses to decide that the web server may read this file and almost nothing else on the system. The label, not the file path, governs access.
One last filter, and it is the cheapest and most elegant of them all: DNS filtering. Before any connection happens, a device asks DNS to turn a domain name into an address. If you control that lookup, you can block the threat before a single packet of real traffic ever leaves.
Oh, that is clever. You poison the very first step. If the bad domain never resolves to an address, the malware on the machine cannot even find its command server to phone home. Can we see what a block actually looks like? My guess is it just refuses to give back a real address.
That is exactly it, and it is the whole beauty of DNS filtering. A blocked domain returns nothing usable, so the connection dies at the starting line. Here is a normal lookup succeeding, then a malicious domain that the DNS filter refuses to resolve.
If you forget everything else from today, hold on to this. Every control in this episode does the same job at a different layer. The firewall filters by address and port, the web filter by destination and reputation, SELinux by what a process may touch, and DNS filtering by the name itself. Layer them, and one slip never becomes the whole breach.
Lock in the one idea that ties Objective 4.5 together. Every control filters at a different layer, and the firewall reads its rules top-down where the first match wins, which is exactly how one misordered line exposed a server.
Carry these into the exam. IDS detects and alerts. IPS detects and blocks inline. Signature catches the known, anomaly flags the odd, and SELinux only protects when getEnforce says enforcing. When blocked traffic still gets through, suspect rule order first.
The win for you is concrete tonight. If you run any Linux box, type getEnforce right now and see whether you are truly enforcing or just taking notes in permissive. You walk into the exam able to repair a broken firewall CL the moment a performance question hands you one.
Next time we go after secure protocols and email security, the safe replacements for the plaintext protocols attackers love. If the firewall finally clicked, that one will feel like the natural next wall.
If this made firewalls and intrusion systems finally make sense, subscribe and stick with the series, the One Security Plus playlist where you watch every control get built and broken. Free practice questions live at certs.professorerica.com.
Here is the one we want from you. Have you ever found a firewall rule in the wrong order in real life, and what did it expose? Tell us in the comments.
Correlation is cheap. Mechanism is what pays the bill. See you next time.
Not bad, Nova. I would give that a solid 8 out of 10. This is Professor Erica. Thanks for watching and signing off.